Hi, my name is Kees and today's video is about my big mistake with surrendering to life. So let me first tell you a little bit about what surrendering to life is. So surrendering to life means that you understand that you as an individual are a part of life. Because of that, you're part of this bigger thing. You know that the ego part of yourself is trying to control everything. Is trying to sort of keep this individual safe, is trying to only care for this individual. So at some point you realize that that individual is actually not so important. It's about life and everything is just happening through life, as life. And it's not so important what happens to this individual. Whether the individual dies, whether the individual goes to this job, that job, or the other thing. So how do you deal with that? Well, one of the ways to deal with that is surrendering to life. And surrendering to life means basically that you let go of making your own choice, you could say. Let go of the ego in the moment. A good book for this is The Surrender Experiment. It's a great book, but in that he talks about his experiences with just surrendering and letting go of the ego in the moment. But how I experienced surrendering was on a practical level that I really felt like I did not want to control life. I felt like my life was guided. I felt like my life had a lot of flow to it, and it does still. And I am guided in a way, and life does move me in certain ways. So that's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing in general. But what also happened is that I felt that the will to do something, like the forcing sort of side of the ego, was forcing me too much. And as a sort of countermeasure towards that, I said, okay, everything which comes up in the mind, an idea that comes up in the mind, or I'm not going to go with it. I'm going to accept it, but I'm going to see how that plays out instead of just sort of flowing with it. What my big mistake was is that I made it impossible to will something, to discipline myself, to keep committed and to keep focused on something, because I thought, well, that is the forcing side. So basically I was surrendering to life, but I was not surrendering to discipline, the will, and not surrendering to the mind as a part of life. Because the mind, in most people, the mind controls everything. But that's also a part of life. And the funny thing is, I did not want to surrender to that. I felt that the mind was, something which got me into all this mess, you could say, because in 2016 I had an awakening experience and I felt that the voice in my mind and creating all these problems and disciplines and forcing myself was very tight, and also you could say was the problem of a lot of the source of the problem of a lot of the things I was anxious about, or I had problems in my life about, that I needed to be productive, that I needed to do this, that, and the other thing. I felt very forced by that. To let go of that, I started to surrender to life. I started to say, okay, whatever the mind is saying, it's okay, but I'll let that go and just see what happens in the moment. And that seeing what happens in the moment is totally fine, of course, but one mistake I did make is that, and I felt stuck by that, sometimes I was inspired to take care of myself, to do some sports or to do some, in a less destructive way, to work on the work that I'm supposed to work on, to make some videos for you guys, for example, or to eat the things that feel right for me and to let go of eating some of the things that do not feel right for me. But what happened was very clearly that I understood that I wanted to immediately then surrender that too. I wanted to immediately not go with that because that would require discipline or forcing or things like that. And sometimes it worked out with very little forcing or discipline at all. But I do realize after some time that this whole idea of surrendering to life is great, as in life takes care of you. But my big mistake was that I didn't surrender to my discipline, that I didn't surrender to my willpower, that I didn't surrender to, you could say, the inspiration I felt to steer myself in a certain direction. I sabotaged myself because with this, I sabotaged my idea because I thought forcing was wrong, and I labeled all discipline and willful choices into forcing. And that doesn't make sense to me right now, because I feel that willpower and discipline and things like that are also just natural forces and are also life itself. So also something to surrender to, something to let flow and let go of, something to be with and not resist against. So for a long time I erased all willpower, I erased all discipline, I erased all rules or restrictions on life and said this is free, and I just let this go totally open and everything, and it was totally beautiful. And it got me into a lot of freedom. I realized that freedom is very high good. I realized that most of life is just guided, even though you don't make decisions, but you just go with the flow, like I did for years, because I've done this, I would say about 5 years. Say about a year ago, I realized that I was sabotaging myself with that. And sabotaging some of the things I needed to progress in life, that I felt that I was meant to. Couldn't do some of the things I was meant to. I felt that I needed to be, or I felt that it would be better for my gut health to be okay, for example, to not eat some certain things. And I felt it would be healthy to eliminate some of the distractions which had been distracting me for ages and didn't feel right for me at all. And I wanted to eliminate them, but that would mean creating a rule and limiting life or not surrendering. Even though I felt all this inspiration and all this willpower and discipline gathering to be surrendered to, but I didn't surrender to that. I resisted my willpower and discipline. I resisted some restrictions, which felt really natural, which felt really good to me, because I had this idea that everything needed to be open. Everything needed to be based on intuition and based on flow. And it is, because will and discipline and everything like that, and the mind itself is also open and intuitive and with the flow and relaxed. So it has opened going with this discipline, and going with the willpower, going with my inspiration, not resisting that, has really opened my experience to some of the things that I really wanted. Been clearing up my gut, and my gut health has been a lot better. I've been able to link some of the things in my mind and implement some of the things which really help me to eliminate distraction and to focus on what I really want, what I want to do in this life. One of these things I want to do is to share. So this is my experience. Surrendering to life is a beautiful thing, but also surrender to willpower and discipline, because it doesn't mean that you need to erase your agenda and just be sort of free floating. It can also mean that you're going somewhere, and also mean that you're rowing if you're a natural rower, you could say. You don't want to take that power away like I did. You want to also surrender to that. So I hope this helps. Much love to you, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.